All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Crossing Swords. As always, I'm Andrew.
And as not always, I'm here for like the third episode in a row. It's a pretty big deal.
It is a pretty big deal. I'm still not sure how I feel about it, but we'll...
Upset mostly is the vibe I'm getting, but
Yeah, I mean, I did say, like, what are you doing here when you arrived? And
you did.
You don't belong here. Your people aren't from here.
Go back to where you came from.
Yeah, to the top of Wallington.
To the mansion.
Yeah, to your... What's it? Your estate.
Yes.
Your stately manor.
Yes.
To your servants.
Told me I never integrated into the podcast.
No.
It's all very hurtful to hear.
Yeah, you've not, you're trying to push your beliefs on me and my people.
I am.
Yeah.
I am, and I hide nothing about it.
No, but I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable.
That's how it's supposed to feel.
Yeah.
It's provocative. It gets the people going.
It does get the people going.
Certainly has done.
But how have you been, bro? You've just been to Africa.
Yes. Waka waka It's time for Africa.
Do you know, I still don't understand why they chose a Colombian singer to do the African.
Seemed a little bit racist in my views.
Yeah, she was white, to be fair.
Yeah. It's in my head now. That was a really dumb thing to do.
Well, you did it.
I know. I know.
You were saying it as if like it was an accusation against myself. Like
no, accusation against myself.
Yeah.
Stupid thing to do. I have just been to Morocco.
Yeah. So what's Morocco like? Because I've only I've never been.
Also, we went to Taradon. We flew to Agadir, which is on the coast. So that's got quite I would say, sorry, I'm just taking my socks off.
Why are you taking your socks off?
I just like being free.
Is this a Moroccan thing?
I do have a new Moroccan name I can tell you about. I'll get to that. No, so we went to Agadir's like coastal. It's got kind of holiday resorts and stuff.
Isn't
Casablanca's in Morocco?
Is that the capital?
Marrakesh is in Morocco.
Isn't that the
Rabat
capital?
is in Morocco. Fez is in Morocco.
Am I supposed to guess which one the capital is?
No, I think the capital is probably Marrakesh. No.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah.
So you didn't even go to like the famous bit, to Casablanca?
No, we went to a town called Taradon, which is like an hour outside of Agadir.
Okay.
And let me assure you, we were the only white people there. So we got a lot of looks. No, but it was quite relevant to be, given what we're going to talk about, to be judged entirely on.
Yeah. Did you feel like, were you treated as an outsider while you were there?
Oh, everyone looked at us, for sure. And one of the girls I was with, one man passed her and went, "Ooh, shoulders."
What's that meant?
Because it's like a Muslim country.
What? And you had a vest on, did you?
I can wear whatever I want.
Okay.
But yeah, she had they had.
One of the women with you?
They had this little rule. The girls that we went with, they decided they would never do knees or shoulders. Pick one.
Yeah.
She had like a vest top on, and the guy was just like, "Oh, shoulders," just quite boldly. And one of the guys we were with has a moustache, and he also said, "Oh, moustache." So we were quite a phenomenon to the town. Lots of people wanted to talk to us, really friendly.
Is it not a place that tends to get tourism then?
No, and the thing is, they all knew where we were staying, because it's obviously only like one riad that accommodates white people. They were all like, "Benyara."
Why are white people not welcome in Morocco?
No, they were very welcome. But in this particular town, they're obviously not common, because there's nothing really there.
But there's only one hotel you could stay at.
It was a riad, so it's like a villa.
A riad? Okay. They've got segregated villas?
No, but I'm guessing there's only one I think there's not many. There's like 2 hotels and like 2 riads in the whole town.
Yeah. That
you can sort of see, and at the end of the day, or touristy riads, and at the end of the day, like I think probably only this one bloke, Salah, was the only one who was like, I get a lot of white custom. Everyone else probably gets other Moroccans or something. Okay. Either way, they were all like, or maybe they were just like, "Who the fuck's dumb enough to come here in the middle of August, you fucking idiots."
Yeah, you said it was like in the 40s, didn't you?
45 for the first week, yeah.
I mean, it hits 30 here and I can't move. Do you know what I mean?
It's so funny.
Wandering Africa in 40-degree heat. I'm just like, that's not a holiday.
I was only there for a week, and the back end of the week was like, so the second half of my week was like sort of 33, 35, whatever. And we'd been so conditioned by the first week, but we were like, 33, cool, cold, get a coat. Yeah. And we didn't, it was still hot.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I got my name. So we were going to get some petrol.
Yeah.
And we got to the end of the road, and you could basically go left or right. And I said to the driver, because there was like 3 of us took turns driving, and I said to the driver, Hayley, shout out Hayley. I said, you can go left or right, and she just shouted at me. She was like, left or right? I need to know. She was like, which is it?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it's both. It's either. That's not the right answer.
No.
And the bloke on his little moped outside the window was like waving us down, and she was like, there's a man waving at me, like I need to just know where the fuck I'm going. So I was like, "Oh, go right then." But she wound down the window because he was like waving to her, and he was like, "Wait, you going petrol?" He was trying to get us to go somewhere else, and he's like, "Petrol." He's like, "This way, this way, this way," and we were like, "Cool." And then he just drove us there, despite telling us.
That's nice.
His name's Tummy. He runs tours and stuff, and he was telling us all about them. We made a good friend.
So he saw customers when he saw white faces.
And then later on, he took us. He saw us again. One night we were going to dinner, and they were like, "Oh, we're looking for an ATM." He was like, "I'll take you to an ATM, and then I'll take you to."
Was he after a bit of cash, do you reckon?
I don't know, but he didn't ever ask for any.
I bet that
good ones never do.
To you either.
It never occurred to me. Oh, it occurred to me. My first thing was like, "What are you selling?"
No, but like
when
he
some.
didn't, when he didn't ask for it. No, that's what I'm saying.
God no. And he took us to the ATM and took us to the thing, and we were sat in them, and he said he turned to. Again, Hayley's very talkative, very outgoing at the front, and he was like, "You're Fatima. It's a beautiful name, beautiful girl, Fatima, whatever." And she turned around, and there was me, Lottie, and Chloe. There's like 2 girls and me standing a little bit behind. And she went and pointed at the 2 girls and went, Fatima also. And he went, "No." Oh, I'm so sorry.
Have you just spilled a drink?
Yeah. It's not much.
Okay, no worries. I haven't got any tissues to
Villagers lickage. It's fine. Shall I carry on?
Yeah.
Sorry. So sorry. No, she turned around and she was like, Fatima went, "No." He went, "Alia and Zephaniah," or whatever the fuck he said. He said the last one that started with the Z. It was so quick. And we were just like, "Oh." And then I was like, "And no, nothing for me." And she went, "And what about Jake?" And he went, "Moroccan man. Moroccan. You look like you could be Moroccan. Moroccan descendants." No, I don't. No, I had my Bono shirt on.
I mean, I've never met a Moroccan, but I'm almost certain you don't look Moroccan.
Said, well, this will be confirmed by I think the name he gave me. He said, Moroccan man. You could have Moroccan descendants. He says, "You are Mustafa Couscous."
Mustafa.
And he said, "And these are your camels." So I was Mustafa Couscous and my 3 camels.
What, the women?
Yeah.
That's not nice.
If I ever did,
women, is it?
I think if I ever did drag, that would be my drag name, Mustafa Couscous. Now,
yeah,
I would be Mustafa Couscous.
Does that work there?
It might be a slightly racially charged show.
Fatima Couscous.
It might be slightly racially charged.
I like Fatima Couscous myself.
Do you like Fatima Couscous?
Yeah.
I'll be Fatima Couscous. He named me Mustafa.
Because you could say like it's got Tim in it as like the wink to the fact I'm actually a man.
You could do, or you could just go. It's a bit racist, isn't it? Fatima Couscous.
Only
the only
if
thing
you
you
make
can think
yourself
of.
Darker.
But food was really good anyway.
Yeah.
So food was really well. I'm not.
Isn't it all like? But don't they mix fruit with meat and shit?
No, not really.
Like in their tagines and stuff, you'll get like couscous. There'll be lamb in it and like raisins and.
There were dates in the couscous, yeah, but that was it.
Oh, rest
not in the couscous, in the tagine.
Yeah.
But the tagine, so good, so flavoursome. The couscous.
Is it spicy?
No, not spicy, sweet.
Oh, wow.
And the best thing is it comes with like bread. You just mop up the thing at the end. Oh, glorious. We had like some grilled meats and stuff.
Yeah.
Good. We also had really cheap pizza. We went and got pizza.
Yeah.
Like a takeaway pizza. Except like Christ knows what we got.
Yeah.
But it was so cheap. It was like fine. It was really good. It was really tasty. But as we opened them up, it's like Christ knows what that is. You come
across like a kebab shop that does pizza, and it's always greasy and disgusting and horrible.
No,
but it's also at the same time the best pizza you've ever had.
Yeah, no, it was beautifully fresh. Like we watched him. I sat there and watched him make them because the football was on in the background. But the problem is there was like we had like 8 pizzas, 7 pizzas, and he just sort of said them, but he didn't write them down anyway. He didn't know them, and then he just sort of like
went and got on with it.
But this is how much it came to: 7 pizzas, like large pizzas, 295 dirham, which translates to about 28 quid.
That's not bad, is it?
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah. How was it in terms of cost going there in general?
We were going in like height of season, so the flights were expensive, and the Riyadh was relatively expensive. We split the Riyadh between us all.
How much does a flight, the average cost of a flight now? Because I haven't flown for years.
I don't. You can still get them really cheap.
Okay.
But in the summer holidays, it's
But
more.
isn't it like deceptive? Like you'll see a flight, it says like 50 quid, and then by the time you're booking, it's gone up to 200 with all the add-ons. And
It can do, yeah. But equally, I'm quite good at not buying any of the add-ons, and I'll just get the flight at.
You'll literally just be sat on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor people style.
You would fly like that though, wouldn't you? Like when Ryanair wanted to do a standing section, I could have seen you.
Yeah, I would.
Paying to stand
Yeah,
on a
I
plane.
would.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have paid a lot.
No, you'd have paid a tenner and there's me sat in first class, feet up. It's like you're a fool.
Yep. I would. But yeah, no, it was really nice. Nice to recharge, like I said to you just before the pod, sometimes the job itself, the new job.
Yeah.
Bit isolated, so you don't always, and sometimes your only view of it
Well,
is...
and it's all on you as well, isn't it? Like,
well, yeah, you and your driver, which is nice, but then you get...
having listened to Ash, though, the driver has very little... Like, other than... Like, I know the driver's got to get him there. I'm sure Ash would defend his position. But the way I've heard him talk about it in the past is basically like, I just get him there. Everything else is on the tour guide.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things as well, like when you only speak to people in passing, or you only see things on Instagram and stuff, it looks like everyone's doing really good time and having a really good time.
Yeah.
And it's nice to kind of talk to people and go, oh no, these are the things I was struggling with, and you can go, yes, I struggle too with those, or oh my god, yeah, they're just...
Are you under
it
like
resets you. It gives you a... I've always been a big fan of setting out perspective, and it gives you a renewed perspective, just talking to them and recharging.
Well, and also it's always nice to talk to people that have had similar experiences, that have been through...
Yeah, and some of them
the
have had
things.
Nightmare groups.
Oh, I'm sure.
So like
And
listening
I'm sure
to
you'll
them,
get them eventually as well.
so listening to them is like lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it sort of mentally prepares you for when it happens to you.
But as we kept saying, it's like, isn't it so mad that we're now in August, mid-August, and at the start of April, none of us knew each other.
No, but I bet you're all quite
And now we're all
close
holidaying together.
Yeah. Going to Africa.
Sharing like
How
intimate
long's the
details of our
flight to
lives.
Morocco?
Like 4 hours.
It's not
When
bad.
you think about it, the
actually.
Canary Islands are just off the coast of Morocco.
Oh, no, totally.
So like,
Yeah, Morocco and Spain are like basically touching.
the only thing that separates them is us.
Yeah. But like when you're doing your trips, how much pressure are you under to like entertain people between like events? Because obviously there's a lot of driving in between, I'd imagine. Depending on what sort of tour
I
you're
don't do
doing.
anything. I put the music on and just
You
let them
just sit-
sleep.
Okay, fair
Most
enough.
of them will fall asleep anyway on the coach.
Okay, that's fair enough. I wasn't
They're
sure
always
like
welcome.
how...
No, they're always
often-
welcome to come up and chat and stuff. And I will sometimes do
But there's no
little
like
games and stuff, but
expectation
nah,
from
not really.
the company to
Nah.
like...
Thing is, once they might set out all these expectations and stuff, but it's one of those things of
It's all about the tour group.
the big sell you but the big sell you get in the office and then actually being on the road, it's so different. Like,
Well, yeah, of course.
you know, when we were on training trip, obviously we all had to be alert all the time, and we were getting, someone was always speaking, there was always some information going on, there
Yeah.
was always, like, you never had a moment's rest. And then you get on your first, like, group, actual passengers and stuff, and, like, they're all asleep.
Yeah.
And you're like, glorious. Love
Well, yeah,
it.
because I imagine, like, as you've said, like a lot of them just come out and get pissed most nights. So, like,
Yeah.
the coach ride to the next place is their sleep.
Also, like, it's quite a soothing thing, the coach.
Oh, I
little
hate
rumbling
that's
of it
I
and-
can sleep in most places, but a coach is one I really struggle on. I don't know what it is. Like, I can just about sleep
Fair.
on a plane. I can sleep on a train, but for some reason, a coach, I've never been able to.
But yeah, no, it's nice. Nice to recharge the batteries as well. We just did nothing more or less, sat in the pool all day.
Nice. Right. Before we get into the real serious business, there's something we need to do. We need to pay respects to a great man. We've lost another great soldier out there.
Yep.
Jack Carlson. For anyone who doesn't know who he is, you may or may not have seen this clip. We might have adverts, so bear with me. Right.
You just assured me that I could speak.
Sit down inside the car. We're not assuring anything. We're under arrest.
Look, I'm under what? Gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest. Have a look at the headlock here. See that chap over there? Get your hand off my penis! This is the bloke who got me on the penis before.
Get some cups. Just jump in the
Why did you do this to me?
Hop in the car. Get some cups.
For what reason? What is the charge? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal? Oh, that's a nice headlock, sir. Oh, yes. I see that you know your judo well.
That's
Good
arguably
one.
my favourite bit.
And you, sir, are you waiting to receive my limp penis? How dare get your hands off me. Ta-ta and farewell.
For me, it's just the get your hands off my penis.
Sir, are you ready to receive my limp penis?
Sort of it. What is the charge? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal?
I mean, it's one of the most viral clips. I mean, and the link I've got is 15 years old, so it's and like the video itself looks even older.
Yeah, I was going to say the video looks really old. I've only seen it in the last couple of years.
And I remember looking up the story once because I wanted to know like what was happening. And basically, he was a famous dine and ditch guy. Like he would show up at restaurants, have a massive meal.
Oh, so his crime literally
buffet.
was eating a succulent Chinese meal.
Yeah, literally.
Respect.
And I think he'd done this restaurant before, this Chinese restaurant that he got arrested from.
So as soon as he turned up.
As soon as he turned up and started eating, they just called the police and they caught him. And that was the viral
This
clip
is democracy manifest.
Yeah.
Gentlemen.
And the internet has given him a...
Because he's handled it. Oh, well, not with grace, but he's handled it just like...
superbly.
Yeah.
In the weirdest way, like, it's almost British, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like the, okay, old chap sort of thing.
That's where you get the kind of Australian-British sense of humour crossover. That's
Yeah,
where you
yeah.
get these similarities in moments like that. Yeah, gentlemen, this is democracy manifest. It's almost like listening to an LBC call. Look, you're like, what's that got to do with anything?
You could imagine like Winston Churchill saying, this is democracy manifest.
And then quickly, swiftly followed by, get your hands off my penis.
Ah, I see you know your
You
judo
judo
well. So what is he talking about? It's
You're
the
ready
Al
to
Capone
receive
moment,
my
isn't it?
limp penis.
It's like the Al Capone moment for me as well. I don't understand what was happening. I don't understand why that was his reaction.
And also, just as well, when he's like, you're under arrest, and he goes, under what? Superb. I
And
genuinely
there's like
love it.
genuinely like 7 police officers
Yeah.
arresting him because he's resisting the entire
Yeah.
time. And when he's saying ta-ta, he's literally being carried into the police car by
beautiful.
like being held in the air.
It's beautiful.
But yeah, he's passed away. I don't know how he died. I didn't look into it any further than the fact I heard.
I think we should all, as everyone was saying yesterday, have a succulent Chinese meal in his honour.
Oh, absolutely. The next time I have a Chinese, before I
Yeah.
have the first bite, I'll be like, a succulent Chinese meal. And there's loads of podcasts I watch where they'll go like, is it a crime? Do you know what I mean? But this is to you, Jack Carlson.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
I hope he's enjoying a nice succulent Chinese meal in the sky with the big guy.
With Jesus leaning over so he can go, get your hands off my penis.
Jesus would be grabbing penis.
Ah, you know your judo well, sir.
Yeah.
I love him. It was a great... honestly, I love that clip.
It's one of the greatest all-time internet clips, isn't it?
Do you know there are some videos that every time it comes up, you will just watch them? So, like, the other one that immediately jumps to my mind that I will always watch is, and it's a really short one, it's Roy Hodgson doing the post-match interview where he goes, let's not take the piss. Well, I think you are. I will always watch that.
He was so aggy in
Because
that
it gives
interview,
me
wasn't he?
It gives me great pleasure.
Did they lose or something?
I can't remember.
why
I think he was. I think the
Wasn't
interview
he
was
at
basically
Fulham
being
as
like,
well?
yeah, I think the interview was basically being like, how comes you were rubbish today or whatever. Like, let's not take the piss in. Like, no, I'm not taking the piss. Well, I think you are. And that Jack Carlson clip, I'll always stop and watch it. Gentlemen, this is democracy manifest. Every time.
Yeah, I can't think of any others off the top of my head.
Like-
There's definitely some out there.
Yeah, there are a few.
Yeah. But off the top of my head, I can't remember any. But no, that's definitely one of the... It's got to be in the top 10.
I will always stop and watch it. Like if I'm scrolling through my feed and it's there, I'm like, yeah, I'll stick
I think
it on.
Ash is the one that sent it to me for the first time. So Ash
Really?
was the one that introduced... And it was years ago now. But yeah.
I love it. But to be fair, it was probably when he was swanning around with Australians,
Yeah.
and
That's a
they
very
may
good
have seen it
point.
first.
He was very popular in Australia, Ash.
He was
And he's
very
not set
popular in
foot on
Australia.
Aussie soil, but he's conquered Australia, you could say.
I wouldn't set foot on Aussie soil.
Would you not?
No, I want to.
Oh, I thought you said I wouldn't set foot on Aussie soil.
Quite selfishly, I was already looking at the next couple of times I've got a couple of months off. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I was like, what if? I was like, what's the least selfish amount of time I could go away for? I was like, I could do 6 weeks, and I could go from Melbourne and I could go up the east coast.
Yeah.
Actually, like Melbourne to Cairns, just like snake along there, Darwin Bay, Byron Bay, even Darwin Bay. I'm not going up to Darwin. Byron Bay, up the Gold Coast. I was like, oh yeah.
I like the
6
idea of
weeks.
Australia, but there's too many deadly creatures out there.
It's a long way to fly as well.
Yeah.
But I'm getting. That's why I was like 6 weeks. I could do that little backpacking.
You have fun.
I will. And I was like, oh, I could also do like a week in Bali on the way back, just to kind of like ease myself back into it.
Why not?
Because I'm never going to be closer to it.
You're not helping the Tory
image.
No.
No, it will literally deplete my savings though.
Yeah. It's up to you, bro.
Oh, I'm probably,
But moving on to a more serious subject, what the fuck is going on in this country?
Tell you what's going on. This is Democracy Manifest.
Yeah, that's what we need now is to Farage to go on television and say that.
Well, I have a question for you over all this.
Please.
Obviously, we're discussing the recent riots.
Yeah.
The far-right riots.
Should I do I deliberately screenshotted like the timeline of everything that happened?
I saved an article with it. Yeah, do the timeline. I just want people to know that I also prepared, which is unlike me.
It all started with the stabbing in Southport on the 29th of July. And then the
So a young man went into a Taylor Swift themed dance class for children
and stabbed 6 young girls, didn't he?
and stabbed. So
Killing
some of the
3.
parents were critically injured. 3 of the girls died, and I think a couple more children were also taken away with relatively critical injuries, like quite bad.
Yeah. Then on the 30th of July, a crowd attacked police and damaged a mosque in violence on the day after the fatal attack. On the 31st of July, disorder spreads to other towns and cities in violent scenes outside Downing Street, and this was in Hartlepool, Manchester, London and Aldershot. On the 2nd of August, Liverpool and Sunderland also had riots, cars and buildings set on fire in Sunderland, while Liverpool sees scuffles outside mosques. Then more incidents on the 3rd of August in Belfast, Blackpool, Liverpool, Hull, Nottingham, Bristol and Portsmouth, seeing more arrests. And then on the 4th of August, Middlesbrough, Sunderland, Rotherham, Tamworth and Weymouth. Hotel housing asylum seekers attacked in Rotherham, unrest in Middlesbrough and other cities. And then petrol bombs thrown in Belfast and attacked in Plymouth, and a pub was damaged in Birmingham.
At least they're consistent.
So quite a lot of violence.
And it all spurned because people like Andrew Tate and Tommy Robinson, and whilst Nigel Farage, he didn't directly say anything, he certainly helped the situation by saying maybe they're not telling us the truth, and those were his words.
Yeah.
They came out and said, it was a Muslim immigrant who did the attacks.
Yeah.
And even though it was
And someone who'd come here illegally as well.
And even though it was a police investigation and they weren't keen to divulge the information in order to try and quell the immediate riots, because that was literally it. It was a Muslim immigrant, so immediately the next day the far right gathered.
And they used an image, Andrew Tate did, of a Muslim man from another country that had been involved with a completely different incident.
And so the police tried to quell it by going, nope, he's Welsh.
And a 17-year-old
he was a 17-year-old boy
whose parents came here legally from Rwanda.
Yeah, his parents are African in origin, but he is from Cardiff.
Yeah.
That is, he has absolutely no Muslim affiliations.
Christian.
Because
Rwanda's a 98% Christian country.
And I think the more they delved into it, it turned out that he actually had I'm not saying really strong links, but he had more links with the far right than he did with anything Muslim.
Yeah.
Like there was evidence that he'd been linked to the far right and no evidence that he was linked to any Muslim communities of any kind. But my question is this. Yeah, Nigel Farage obviously came out, well, maybe they're not telling us the truth. And it was like, come on, mate. You deliberately staring at it. Why don't you fuck off to Clacton and actually see them for a change?
And do your job.
Why now?
Why have the riots happened?
Now? Why now? Why not at a previous attack? Why not stir the shit for a previous incident?
The genuine answer really is I don't know. I don't know what about this incident.
Is it because
you could maybe argue that under the Conservatives, the attitude towards those ideals through things like the Rwanda scheme, the things Rishi Sunak, Suella Braverman, Priti Patel and people in government were saying about foreigners, like their voices were probably arguably more welcomed and heard at that period. So perhaps now that there's a Labour government that, and I'll get onto it.
No, that's what I was thinking. Is it that?
I think that is possibly it, that they feel terrified that they're going to be silenced and crowded out and lose their country.
And that apart from...
like, I don't agree with any of this, by the way. This is just my
Apart
theory.
from a handful, most of the ones that had the really far-right rhetoric, most of them were ousted at the last general election.
Yeah, most of them, yeah.
Or chose not to continue. Whatever, however you look at it,
Yeah.
they're no longer representing in the House of...
And, like, also, you could look at
Parliament.
the fact that in the general election, 4 million people, I believe, voted for reform. And, like, they had a huge amount of the vote share, but, yeah, ended up with a very small amount of MPs. Perhaps that's fed into it as well, that they're like, well, actually, we've voted for what we want and we've not actually got it. But I think, in truth, the percentage of people amongst them that are probably the actual knuckle-scraping racists is probably smaller, but I think people joined in because they're knuckle-scraping idiots that used it as an opportunity to be violent. And
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because it's not too dissimilar to the 2011 riots, is that it was like, under the guise of we care about our community and our children in our community, we want our children to be safe. That's what we feel. It's crossed the line. We don't feel like our children are safe. So I'm going to protest that by grabbing a bunch of beers, turning up, getting pissed, doing some coke and charging at a riot place.
I think it shows, because if you look at the events of the last couple of days, there was supposed to be a riot in Croydon, one in Brighton, both of which barely any of the right wing, like in Brighton, like 7 people turned up to riot.
They were outnumbered by about 1,000 to 1 for
good
anti-fascists
people.
that they call themselves.
And in Croydon, there was videos of people sharing food in the streets, and they turned up to defend Croydon. They were like, if anyone kicks off, we're going to fucking deal with this. We're about one love. And so I'd like to think most of the people involved were just arseholes who used it as an opportunity, but I think the racist knuckle scrapers also used it as an opportunity to create violence and be violent towards brown people.
Yeah, of course they did.
What makes me feel, because I felt quite conflicted about it and quite sad, and then like Joe said something to me last night that actually the amount of people that have taken to the streets to protect their communities and serve their communities shows that there's far more good people out there rather than bad. And I was like, no, she's right.
That's the way to see it.
Yeah.
It's not having bad moments, it's how we deal with those bad moments, it's how we respond to them.
How do we fix this though? Do you know what I mean? Like, I know that's a big question. And like, can we fix the people that are involved with these riots? Is there a path back for people like that? And can we change their minds? Like, there's so much that goes within it.
I think it's a much bigger problem than just a simple fix, because I think, first of all, you look historically, we are basically repeating history.
Yeah.
I don't want to just, but it's the most obvious extreme example to get emotions goated. But 1930s Germany, we are there. We're a country that's having economic hardships, mostly self-inflicted, by the way, and that's a big thing that people don't want to admit, that all of the experts and the economists and the not just economists but experts within each individual industry are all saying this is self-inflicted hardship.
Yeah.
But obviously the media are going, well, it's not. And I think
it's not just the media though.
Who was it? No, not Fiona Bruce. We like Fiona Bruce. Victoria Derbyshire.
Okay.
She said a thing once where she said it really frustrated her, and she said she's sticking around because she still ultimately believes in the BBC, and she still believes what it stands for and what the good it can do. But she says, she fights her corner every single time. She says she has this argument so many times with the producers and stuff, because she says when they have a debate, for example, on the damage of Brexit, she says the producers decide we have to have 2 people who think that it's bad and 2 people who think it's good. That's a fair, balanced thing. She says, but she said, but in terms of balance, she says that doesn't reflect the reality. She said, we would have had thousands of people to pick from who think it's bad. She said, and we would have had to spend 6 days trawling the internet trying to find two with any relative credibility that think it's good. She said, and we've dragged them in. They're the only two in the entire field that think it's good. She says, but somehow, when you present it to the people, that's not what it looks like. They go, well, look, half of them think it's good and half of them think it's bad.
I think the mistake with a lot of these things, and I think it's whether it's a debate with, like at a general election, or a discussion on the BBC, there's a responsibility to actually have, so like beforehand you need to know what you're going to be talking about and what they're likely to say. And if Farage is on television and you know he's going to bang out figures about immigration and the effect they have, like the crime rates and things like that, the BBC has a responsibility, in my opinion, to have the actual facts ready so that when he says that, go, actually, Nigel, we're going to stop you there. We've got these figures from such and such place. Actually, it shows undeniably, which they do, by the way, that people that come to this country to live and work, whether they're illegal or
they contribute far more than they ever take out.
100%, and tend to, as long as they're supported, commit crime at a much lower rate than other people that aren't brown or from another country. And we don't do that, and that is what actual balance is. It's presenting the facts, and we don't do that. The other question I've got, because I realised we didn't actually say how do we fix it, but I feel like politicians have as much responsibility for what's happened, because since Brexit, it's improved, but in general we can't really discuss it. We've seen like more signs of politicians being like, well, I think we need to revisit it at some point, or we need to talk about freedom of movement, but in general, it's been such a, we can't even touch that. We can't
emboldened
discuss it.
Slightly by the decline of those pro-Brexit MPs who are now no longer MPs, a lot of them.
So like the narrative's changing slightly, but the damage not discussing it has done, I feel like Keir Starmer and Labour, while they were in opposition, are responsible to a degree for not challenging the rhetoric coming out of the Conservatives, because they didn't really. Like, when
because they knew they needed the electorate on their side, and then they knew they didn't want to rock that boat.
A bit like for you with the Israel-Palestine situation, I just feel like sometimes, regardless of whether it's going to cost you, you should do the right thing. And I feel like and it sort of goes against my argument previously that you need to give these people a place to be, but there has to be a limit to that. And I feel like racist rioting where people tried to set fire to a Holiday Express that had innocent men, women and children in, there's a line that's very much been crossed here.
And I'll tell you where that comes from. That comes from the dehumanisation of them from high up senior politicians and the media, but high up senior politicians. And when you look at
Farage having billboards with him on, with crowds of people coming into like and talking them about an invasion and things
and
like that.
Just to go back to the point I was making about the comparison between us and 1930s Germany, we've had two things. We've had an economic depression self-inflicted, which Germany didn't have at the time, and then an economic depression inflicted by something greater that none of us could control, that the rest of the world also had to deal with. So the rest of the world also had to deal with the First World War, but Germany had to deal with it more because they were the ones that were blamed as being the aggressors.
Yeah.
Well, that's sort of like a little bit to make the comparison. Every country in the world had to deal with COVID, and it's been very, very tough, and a lot of countries are struggling. However, we've had to deal with it more because just before COVID, we cut ourselves off from the rest of the world, economically speaking.
Yeah.
So we're now
better access to medicine, supplies and everything had we still been in the European Union.
And food. I mean, even today we're talking about, like, haven't seen beef tomatoes in the supermarket for this, like, at all this year.
I've heard a lot of stuff recently about that people should brace themselves later in the year for the food shortages that are coming.
Yeah, but that's my point, is we've both gone through that thing, and at the same time the governments were using this really dangerous language. Remember a couple of years ago there was that whole hurrah over Gary Lineker's tweet. But I think, we said at the time it's accurate, but I think now it's proven even more accurate, because now those words have had knock-on effect. Using words, like you said, like swarm, like invasion, like you're not putting human face on these people.
Even putting the word illegal on these people is dehumanising.
And the problem by keep doing it is that even when someone breaks through that barrier, example, your next door neighbour is suddenly you're next door to a family from Syria, for example.
I've
and
got
slowly-
Nigerian neighbours.
And slowly over time, you talk to them and you go, "Oh, there." What happens is you don't break through and go, "Oh, maybe I've got this wrong." All that happens is you go, "Oh, not them."
Yeah. It's the
Do you know
famous
what, it's
thing
that-
James O'Brien talks about. I wasn't talking about you.
Yeah, it's the others.
Yeah. And like I was at work the other day,
Difficult to break.
and I was sat in an office with a lady of Tamil descent. So she comes from Sri Lanka, and she's talking to me about how there's too many immigrants. And she was born in Sri Lanka, so that means she is an immigrant or a migrant. And I just sat there all open mouthed, and I didn't correct her because I was like, if someone of that descent has got that attitude, there's not a lot I'm going to be able to say to her at work in a few minutes that's going to change her opinion, and I'm just going to.
All you can do is ask the questions. I told that's the way to do it.
No, I know.
I know.
I
You
find
didn't
it
have to.
difficult
Yeah, I
at
know.
work though.
It's not the relationship.
No, and I don't. Like, I'm at a different place at the moment. My place is closed down temporarily while they have work done, so I'm working somewhere else. So it's with people I don't know as well.
But it's
I
all that
just
stuff.
and like, so if even people that are of that group, she might not be Muslim, but she's a immigrant, to actually sit there and say we have too many immigrants coming to this country, I was like, what are you talking about?
And then ultimately, what comes on, I know there used to be a lot of Polish hate in this country, but what it comes down to then is it's that age-old story. We haven't got a lot. It's easier then to point at someone else and go, it's their fault.
Yeah.
But the difference is then we can't look at people coming in from certain countries because we can't always tell where they're from
it's
straight up.
ambiguous.
But I can look at a brown person and know straight away as
They're
a
not from-
like,
or say they're not from here.
yeah, you're not from here. And if they go, I am, you go, yeah, well, your parents or your grandparents, like somewhere down the line, very recently, you've come in from somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's easy to identify. It's dangerous.
Also, Tommy Robinson's a fucking scumbag.
100%.
Um,
The fact that he's a millionaire off of bigotry and racism.
he's worked for the Russians. He's gone on their television and done shit over there. He's a race baiting wanker. And like, something that annoys me about what goes on with him is that because he's a dubious fuck who does racist thing, riles up hate, and this is what he does. He'll, like, one of the recent marches they had in London, he turns up, he gets everyone fired up, sends them off, and then hops in a cab and fucks out the country.
Yeah.
So he literally riles up crowds, gets them going, and then fucks off.
And there's something
leaves
very
them to
interesting
it.
that while we're on the Tommy Robinson, Stephen Yaxley Lennon debate.
I laughed when I heard that was his name, by the way.
Not debate, the
And I've never really wanted to talk
topic.
about him because I don't like giving him.
No, but it's worth talking about in this sense because he's, I think, currently in Greece.
Cyprus.
Ayia Napa, that's right. And basically someone got hold of this information and went, he's staying at this resort. And just to give a bit of context as well, Tommy Robinson recently travelled with incorrect documentation and was removed from Canada, I think it was.
Yeah.
For having it. He's also failed to turn up at a court date recently. So he is now a criminal.
Yeah.
Who has a criminal record.
Yeah.
Who has...
Well, he's also been in prison for GBH.
Yes. Yes.
Football hooliganism back in the day.
But, I mean, he's actively got a warrant in his name.
No, I know. Like, the whole situation with that is basically, the quick rundown is he did a, air quotes, documentary about grooming gangs and Muslim violence and shit like that. And he libelled a Muslim man, accusing him of all sorts of stuff, where basically he had no proof. The guy then takes him to court and the judge rules, you cannot ever say these things again or you'll be held in contempt of court. You've been proven to have... You've got no evidence, basically. And he even admitted in an interview he had no evidence because he went... And I've gone off of Jordan Peterson just for having him on, let alone the tone of the conversation they had. And I turned it off after 20 minutes because it was just a poor Tommy Robinson episode. Like, oh, he's so
hard done
by and he's a victim. Yeah, totally. And I just care about people. That's the line he's spinning. I'm just trying to protect children and protect people. But
you know how I protect my children? 6-pack, do a line, smash up some police vans.
Yeah.
That's
Rile
how I
the
do
crowd
it.
up,
That's how I do it. Have a little scrap,
So he
It's all
libels.
about the kiddies.
So he libels this guy. Gets told by a judge, "You're never allowed to talk about these things again." Then starts going in front of crowds, showing the documentary to people. So the judge has held him in contempt of court, and he fled the country. He tried to flee the country at first, I think 2 days before the court date. He got held by the border force, and then they had to let him go, and then he fled the country, and he hasn't come back.
But it's and thank you for that context, because basically he is now a wanted criminal with an active warrant out for his arrest. Essentially, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of
If he
complications
enters the
of it.
country again, he'll be arrested.
He's now feared for the safety of his children,
Yeah,
because naturally people are turning on him. He's taken them. He's fled to another country to seek out the safety of his children,
yeah,
but going in as a known criminal with an active warrant out for his arrest,
yeah.
with a violent criminal past.
So he's guilty of everything.
He's got a
accuses
violent
these
criminal
people.
history. He's gone to another country for the safety of his children, and he's now angry that he's being targeted for going to another country for the safety of his children, and he cannot
While he's on
see.
a sunbed, by the way.
And he cannot see the irony of the words
Well,
he
these people
uses
never can,
and the
can
words
they?
that are being thrown back at him.
Yeah, but he's the victim, and that's the thing. If in someone's lens they are the actual victim. But one of the reasons I brought him up, I've got a little clip. There was, I think it was a question time. It was
Is
quite
it a
few-
Carla?
Yeah. And it's just a snippet.
Love a Carla. He's so
Oh, I'm
articulated.
glad you like him.
So articulated. So
If anyone wants to get
concise with what he
he's
says.
so intelligent as well.
Mm.
If anyone's interested to find out who Akala is, there's an old Full Disclosure episode with James O'Brien that he did, and that's a really good conversation about race.
He's
they have.
basically like a literary figure. He's like a
And he's a
poet. He does a
rapper
bit
as
of
well.
rapping.
Yeah. He's
But
an academic.
He writes. He's an academic.
Mm.
It fucking shows. And his obviously speciality is.
Well, I didn't finish it, but I started reading his book a few years back. It was called Natives.
Yes, I was.
Ruins. Something about the ruins of empire.
I was thinking of reading that.
Yeah, I would recommend what I read of it. It was really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I will play a bit of a clip of Akala.
Yeah, because Tommy Robinson asked the question in the crowd, doesn't he?
It's exactly what I said at the beginning of the programme. When we deal with racism, rather than dealing with the structural reality and all this nonsense about people are racist because they're frustrated about their life, it's totally classist. What we're saying, only working class people are racist. Do me a favour. Racism was not invented by working class people. It was invented by elite academics through pseudoscientific nonsense and perpetuated as part of political policy. From the top down, not the bottom up. In fact, if we look back at the history of this country, when there were slave catchers in the streets, people had far more allies in working class parts of London than they did from rich people who were trying to catch them and send them back to the Caribbean. So let's be honest about the history and deal with the bigger problems of structural racism, because then smaller things and smaller frustrations that are breeding this type of nonsense won't be excavated so much. But this is the problem, is we focus on nonsense like this rather than dealing with why a British soldier you've probably never heard of, a gentleman called Christopher Alder, died in 1999 in police custody. There is footage on YouTube that you can see for yourself of him on the floor with his bottom half exposed, with police officers around him making monkey noises over his dead body. You've never heard his name. Why?
And what you don't see, because it's audio obviously, is Tommy Robinson's face afterwards, just sat there with absolutely nothing to say. And that's the thing, right, with these people, whether it's Farage, Robinson, Andrew Tate, because Andrew Tate did a debate with Piers Morgan, and I never thought I would say this. Piers Morgan actually did a really good job. I didn't watch all of it because it just ended up turning into a bit of a shouting match by the end. But the concurrent theme of all these people, none of their thoughts, their proof stands up to any scrutiny whatsoever. No. And like, look, do I think there are dodgy Muslim people out there? Yes, of course there are. But there's just as many dodgy white people, if not more, because there's more of us in this country. So yeah, and like, an interesting question I wanted to talk about is how do we even attempt to separate when we're punishing the people that were involved in these riots from, do we even attempt to separate the actual racists from the people that just joined in, or do we just
Don't
treat
think you
them?
can. I don't know how you go about that.
Yeah.
Other than talking to them on an individual level. It's interesting as well. Once the arrests started coming in and they've started being sentencing, although still, I'm going to mention it once because I'm going to mention it during this episode. These people who have now actively gone out and attacked police officers, who have gone there with the explicit intention of, I'm just going to have a fucking scrap, have disrupted a whole city, have burnt libraries. And there's a quote as well that's like, something to do with the burning of libraries by people who can't read. And I think it's a really powerful... I'm only sorry I'm not going to give you the full quote because I think it's quite powerful and apt. But they're still getting shorter prison sentences than people who had a Zoom call to plan a protest. A protest that was about saving the planet.
I did have that thought as well.
I can't not mention it. I'm not going to dwell on it, but I have to mention it.
Yeah. We did get phenomenal footage of that bloke getting hit by 3 bricks.
Amazing. That's one of my favourite clips
I've ever seen in my life. That is probably right up there.
That's one of the clips at the moment. That's one of the clips that I will sit and watch every time it comes on. Because the first one, you're like, I don't know, there's nothing. Man getting hit in the groin.
It's the fact he gets smacked on both sides of his head by a brick. Like, it's almost simultaneously. One hits and then the other hits. So he sort of gets knocked about and then he's walking away holding his head and then just smack right in the gonads.
There's also a very interesting discussion. I don't know which side I fall on, but there's like a row of riot police. I don't know if you've seen the video. And a guy's walking along goading the fuck out of him.
I've seen that and he just...
And one of them just sort of like knocks him. He doesn't like... It's not particularly forceful, but he does knock him over because he's obviously quite drunk.
Yeah.
Or under some influence.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, was he right to do it? And the general overriding answer from most people were, yes, he was goading the fuck out of him. I don't think he did deserve it. I think the police officers to stay calm. I'm actually against that.
And I tend to agree.
But at the same time, I don't have sympathy
for
someone.
But if I add back in the context, and this is the thing, we don't know how many incidents if these police officers had to be at, how many people have they had screaming in their face that day, and we should hold our police to a high standard. And if that had happened to a left-wing protester, which, by the way, there's a very good thing to point out because they're going on about 2-tier policing, which is a term I'd never really heard before.
It's not a new term, but it's the latest buzzword.
Yeah, and what they're basically trying to say is when they're dealing with the left-wing protesters, whether it's for Palestine or something like that, that they're not being treated anywhere near the same way as these right-wing
They're being treated
ones
kinder, is the accusation. They're being treated with more leniency.
But when you add in the context that there's been basically no violence at the left-wing protests and add in there's been guaranteed violence at the right-wing protests, that's why you're getting 2 different reactions from the police because the behaviour is completely different.
Exactly.
Yes, there's been violence at the left-wing protests, of course there have, but as a percentage, it's like minuscule. It's no more than you get. Someone gave an example of like a weekend at Glastonbury. There's no more arrests at these protests than there are at Glastonbury.
Well, also, it's very interesting that it's not uncommon when you dig into the incidences of violence at the left wing, particularly like there's been a lot of pro-Palestinian marches and stuff.
Yeah.
When you dig into them, that actually it's been a clash between
right-wing
other thugs, other right wingers turning up, and rather than just peacefully protesting against the protest, they actively get involved and they get very confrontational.
So would you agree with me that we should just, because in my opinion, if you turned up to one of these riots, whether you were racially motivated or not is irrelevant for me.
Yeah,
personally.
Of course it is.
And like, I've been really strong about wanting to sit in the middle and try and, but these people have you knew what you were associating with when you turned up at this thing. Do you know what I mean? So whether you were just looting Greggs, I couldn't give a fuck. You were part of a racially motivated riot.
Yeah.
So you should be treated as a racially motivated rioter.
And also, for those in Rotherham as well, that's attempted murder.
Mm.
You've attempted to
try
kill
and burn down a hotel with innocent people
simply based on where they've come from, the colour of their skin.
Like, I can understand,
or where
I can't understand being racist. I can understand how people are stupid enough to get there from like a psychological point of view. I don't understand it in terms of like, I respect that opinion or anything, but I can't understand how you go from that to let's kill them. I can't.
It's interesting as well because we've said it before. I have far more in common.
And supposedly in response to children being killed.
It's about the safety of the children.
Like, especially the first riot in Southport. How on God's green earth did any of them think that was an appropriate response to a community that had just suffered that sort of event?
I'll tell you how. Because And like, I'm genuinely making an attempt here. I
Yeah.
don't think this is the whole explanation, but this is part of an explanation, part of the reason I think, because of the way that their echo chambers work, and because they tend to be echo chambers of anger and bile, what has happened is they have been riled up to say we have to, and this will be the language that was used amongst them. I'm relatively confident of that from the little bits I have seen, is that they will have been told we need to fight for our country. This is a war. There is an invasion, and the response to an invasion is to mount a defence. We need to go and fight for our country. So they have turned up to fight because they have all those violent, angry words already rattling around inside of their echo chambers.
Well, we've seen, even when the one video where we criticised the right on our TikTok, we've never had a reaction like it to any of our videos. It was, I would say, 90% negative, the reaction to it. So they are by far the most loudest and aggressive group out there, without a question. Is it possible to hold people like Tommy Robinson, Farage, even Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman and people like that, and people who run the Daily Mail, is it possible to hold these people account for this? Like, do you think they'll be held to account over this? I don't personally.
The only way they get held to account is if the people revolt and take control of their things off them, you know. So for the politicians, it's voting them out and keeping them out, making sure they don't have a platform. Anytime they turn up to speak anywhere, the crowds are like 3-4 people, that kind of thing. For the paper owners and stuff, it's just by people not buying the papers. It's the people getting fed up and going, enough of your racist bullshit. We're not buying it. We're not being fed it. Your bile, your anger. You want us to just... Because that's what they do. The papers want to rile you up, cock you, and then point you.
Yeah, and then immediately like wash their hands of it as if like this has all come out of nowhere. Like there's no context to what's caused this whatsoever.
Yeah.
And like, I even listened to something today where like there was an investigation into papers like the Mail and papers like them that will tell a negative story on the front page but post a completely irrelevant picture from another story either above it or around it that takes up more space than the story itself to subconsciously link the image, and it's normally of a black person or a Muslim person or someone that's not English, to link them subconsciously constantly. And it's not even just on their front page. If you flick through their papers, you'll find it.
I said to you before, when I was like 16 or whatever in media studies, and we did the study where we did this thing where we went through various articles describing incidences of violent crimes, and it was always the language, and it genuinely, it never occurred to me, because obviously at 16 I wasn't really reading many articles and stuff. If I was buying productions, prints, I assure you they were more for the pictures than the articles at 16 years of age.
The only thing I was buying back then would have been like nuts.
Yeah,
so,
and you're going, it's for the football. I like their incisive thoughts.
No, I just like the tits.
Yeah, I think I bought one where it was like, you know, the countdown of like
I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, Lucy Pinder was
100 sexiest women in Britain or whatever, and it was just I could go for it and go, no, she's got to be higher. How's that? No, you know, like,
I love the fact that's what you do with a tier list of hot women.
Rank them even more.
Yeah.
I'm Mark Zuckerberg without the money.
Double misogynistic.
I'm Mark Zuckerberg without the money.
You did a misogynistic purchase and was like, no, they've not objectified these women enough.
No, but in all seriousness, all joking aside, like we went through these articles, and because it is a topic that really does deserve a moment of brevity and seriousness allocated to it, because when it was. And you know, Muslim people were not even in the conversation, because I know they do commit violent crimes, but they're also quite generally they're a relatively nice, peaceful community. They when they grow up, for up until a relatively young age, they sort of keep themselves in their own community. So it's all about community. It's all about bringing food and being nice and whatever. It was mostly focused on black versus white, and it was in stories featuring white, and it was males, you know, white males and black males. Young white males that were involved in violent crimes that were reported upon by the newspapers were described as the young man, the man, this person, blah blah blah. Black people were described as the thug, the criminal. It's they're guilty before you've even read the story.
Well, one of the famous...
And not just guilty, they're violent, they're
one
dangerous.
One of the famous examples of that with something more trivial is Raheem Sterling versus, I think it was Phil Foden they showed, didn't they?
Yeah.
The coverage the two of them got for doing exactly the same thing. It's like Raheem Sterling lost a game and then posted a photo on social media of like a car he'd bought, and he got death threats, if I remember correctly, and he got criticised by the media. Phil Foden does it. 0. The coverage was completely positive. I think the next one was he'd bought his mum a house. He got criticised for posting that online during like a part of austerity where people were struggling. Phil Foden does exactly the same thing. It might not have been Phil Foden.
No, but he's a good mama's boy. He's looking after his family.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
He's done good. He's, you
but
know.
I couldn't believe when I was reading through them how consistent it was. I thought it might just be one publication or one article or something.
No, it's constant.
It was so consistent. Every article, if the perpetrator was black, the language was violent.
Yeah,
If the perpetrator was white, the language was neutral.
And if you listen to...
And that's a different... It's not even positive. Neutral and negative, violent. Those were the consistent differences.
If you listen to Okada, you'll hear figures like between 1990 to 2005, the term black on black violence was used 50,000 times in newspapers. Like it's been a concerted effort to alienate people of different ethnicities and to stoke hatred between communities. And I genuinely feel for anyone that's Muslim or not white at the moment, because I can't imagine how they must be feeling. I'd like to think, like my sister and like myself and you, there's enough positive that has happened as well to sort of not wipe out what's happened, but
a lot of them are in a self-imposed lockdown.
Yeah,
they won't come out of the house because they're scared for their safety.
And I can understand that. Absolutely.
Because the boldness of it now, we're at a point now where people will shout abuse at particularly Muslim women in the street, openly in the street,
would you like
just as they're passing by.
It's of an incident a year ago. I don't know if you know who the woman is. She's not on LBC anymore since she criticised Sangeeta Miska.
Yeah,
it was of an incident
she's great.
about a year ago. It's about a 3-minute clip.
Okay, before you do it, can I just throw this stat at you?
Please do.
Last week, the whichever office is responsible for these statistics said that Muslim hate crime and threats and things like that, so not even necessarily direct violent attacks, but violent attacks, violent threats and stuff was up 8 times from where it was last year. This week, it is up 20 times.
Shit.
That's the influence. That's the real life impact of what these people are doing and saying.
Do you think there's...
I'm far more closer to Mohammed, who's just brought his family over from Syria and who just wants to get a job and provide for his family, than I am to Richard Tice or to Lord Rothmire or any of those people.
I mean, you have said on the pod before when we've talked about people that come to this country to live their lives and raise their families. I couldn't care whether you were born here or not. If you've come here to live your life and raise your family, you're as British as anyone. Like you have invested in our society and want to be a part of it.
It's why, and I will let you play the clip.
That's absolutely
it's
fine.
Why the term has switched now, because I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's an increase in the use of the word indigenous, because when they go, these people need to come here and integrate into society, they can't really say that anymore because they look around and go, you have
second generation.
You are quite British. Well, it doesn't matter because you weren't born here. Your family weren't born here.
Yeah,
and it's just like, none of us were born here. Christ, we're a mix of Viking, French, Celtic, Northern European Celts. Like, none of us were born here, for fuck's sake.
How
far back do you want to go?
Everyone who lives anywhere arrived at where they are at some point.
Maybe, at a push, Ethiopians.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure that's where the evidence for the first human was, in the desert in Ethiopia. So at a push, Ethiopians can say they have been there.
What I also find difficult
forever
is I can understand anyone feeling completely angry, disappointed and let down by this country over how it's got in particularly the last 14 years and how little support there is out there, how little caring and feeling there is even from the government and even under Labour with what is essentially austerity, what we're going to get. Like, I can understand people being angry. I can't understand believing the people to be angry at are other desperate people, not the people in charge or the people that are rich.
And one of the big topics that keeps coming up as well, you know, the NHS, it's why we can't get appointments and stuff. And it's like, you are far more likely to be helped in the NHS in your appointment by an immigrant or the child of an immigrant, whether that's the nurse, the doctor, the person checking you in, the person coming to feed you, the cleaner that comes around and cleans up because you've thrown up all over the place because you're so ill, or your blood or whatever. You're far more likely to be helped by an immigrant or the child of an immigrant than you are to be behind one in a queue. You know, that's why you can't get in. I'm not saying there's going to be immigrants and children of immigrants in the queue ahead of you. But then if you look around at the people behind the scenes that are going to help you and see you, far more of them are going to be, you know, it's that thing that they're a net positive.
But the problem is, if you're someone that sees someone with a different skin colour and that's a problem for you, then it doesn't matter the situation, what they're doing, what they contribute. It's not going to be good enough.
It's this idea as well of what, like, white people get very angry because everyone, and I think you've touched upon this earlier with Tommy Robinson, everyone likes to be the victim. Everyone likes to see themselves as the victim. And white people have, you know, there's lots of white people, ourselves included, through our lives who have had it really tough and socioeconomically have struggled at times, us and our families. Obviously not mine, I'm very rich, but have genuinely struggled. But what we've never struggled because of is our skin colour. I've never not been able to get a job because my last name was of African origin. I've never, you know, been turned away.
I've never been no, tell a lie. I've been stopped by the police once, but
yeah, me too.
And it lasted 2 minutes.
I've never been turned down from a promotion because I'm a colour, and they go, I'm not. This is what it comes down to, is that thing of we've started using the term white privilege more and more in the last 5 or 6 years, and it's made white people feel like no, that makes it feel like I've never faced hardship. And it's like, that is not the point at all. No. It's that you have faced the same hardship as these people. You've both faced the same hardships, but they've faced a little bit more because of their skin colour. And what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that takes away some of your hardship. It doesn't take away any of your hardship. That's all still there. But what it means is you don't have that little bit on top. They have that little bit on top, that extra little hardship in their big
but we know people don't like that. Even like the older generations now, when you say like things are shit at the moment for
it's
young
not
people.
No, we had it shit.
We had it tough. It's like, no, but when you were younger, a mortgage was 8 times the yearly income. Now it's 20 to 25 times. So like, there's a slight difference.
Not saying you didn't struggle.
Yeah. And even in the last couple of years, if you just look at like the disparity between what your money could buy 2 years ago compared to what it buys now, like I'm only earning slightly less than I was earning as a manager a couple of years ago. And my money goes at the end of the month, I'm like, where the fuck has my money gone? Like, I'm doing nothing lavish. So like, I can understand people's frustrations. I can understand why they're angry, but not at who they're angry at. And I don't know how we change that. And part of me wonders whether it's not even worth trying to change those people, focusing on educating younger people and just doing our best to make sure they're not brought up that way. Because like the biggest thing for me, and I wasn't racist before this, but like in terms of being more comfortable with people from another country, was going into the workplace, was working amongst people from other countries.
Interestingly, I listened to a radio phone in this morning.
Yeah.
And one of the chaps was saying he used to be like that. He was like because he was like, when I was growing up, it was Polish people. Sort of why it's on my mind why I mentioned it earlier, but he was like, Polish people, he said, they was coming over here stealing our jobs and stuff. He says, and he said, then I moved to the other end of the country because I met my wife, we moved to the other end of the country, he said, and I started working in a shop. And he said, there were clashes at the start, no doubt, he says, but when I look back on it now, I realise that those clashes were probably there in part because of my prejudice that I went with. He says, but when I started talking to him, and because I was forced to talk to him, I'm working alongside him, he says, I realised that they're not the enemy. No. They're not coming over and stealing our jobs. They're good, hard-working people who are coming over here.
Who are
just trying to earn a living.
Yeah.
He said, I think, and he was like a big advocate for it. He's like, I think more people just need to be put in situations where they're forced to interact with these people. Because in these echo chambers, you don't there's a lot of talk about brown people in these echo chambers.
Yeah.
But no one's talking to brown people.
No.
No one's going over and speaking to these people and actually getting to know them and then coming away and going, nah, I was right, wrong.
Yeah.
Because that's not going to be the outcome. 'Cause if you go and talk to them, you're going to
And
come away and go, oh, they're just people.
I found disproportionately that amongst people that have come to this country, they work far harder. They do multiple jobs. They're providing for their children and they're paying more tax than most people.
Arguably, doing more jobs actually suggests that they are taking away jobs.
No, but like they're willing to work all the hours God sent to make sure their families want for nothing, that they have a good home, that they're in a good catchment area for schools. They give a shit about that.
I don't know, we've said it before. It's not their fault they're willing to work for pennies. It's the person who's paying them who's willing to go, oh, fuck this, I can get away with paying pennies.
But one of the stories that opened my eyes the most, and I know I've told it on the pod before, was that I worked with a guy from Sri Lanka and he was deported to us from Sri Lanka for being a political, he was at a hunger strike outside their version of parliament, and he was put in prison for 2 years and then sent over here because a lot of the issues in Sri Lanka have been caused by us. Shock horror. So we're responsible for looking after the people that are causing unrest in Sri Lanka. And then he comes here, can't speak a fucking word of English, gets free jobs, English lessons, starts a family, settles. And you hear a story like that and you're like, I can't fucking imagine how hard that must have been. But he's making the best. He was one of the happiest guys I'd ever met as well. And he was just happy to be in a country where his family could be treated by the NHS, where there was good schools and plenty of food, and he wasn't under threat of being arrested for his political views. And I feel we massively undervalue those things. And I worry that those things are under threat because of knuckle scrapers. Like the reaction, I don't want the reaction to them to be so extreme that we're all fucked. Do you know what I mean?
Just makes you wonder what we're heading for.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. But
because we are very much in a pre-World War II world.
Yeah, it like the world in general feels like a bit of a powder keg, doesn't it? Like you could just set off a match anywhere and it could just cascade and just fucking. And like you're seeing the rise of the right, and luckily they're not getting voted in, but they are getting more popular in different countries, whether it's France, I've even heard in Germany, it's not great.
In Italy, they've got a big far-right movement.
Yeah. So like it is on the rise, and
Giorgia Meloni,
I can't remember
right.
the quote 100% or even who said it, but it was something, and I'm sure you've said it before actually, of like all of these things are like each generation has to re-win that war. Do you know what I mean? Like whatever the thing is, whether it's race equality, equality for whatever it is, you have like gay rights, trans, like you have to keep fighting that fight every single generation.
Yeah.
And I think
the win is never permanent.
I feel like for the last 20 years, the political class has been so obsessed with pandering to a small maybe not a small, but a minority of the country that are ignorant idiots and racist. Not all of them, but a large chunk of them are racist. And we're paranoid about pandering to them because they are the aggressive and violent ones. And I think we perhaps need to start rethinking that. I'm uncomfortable, like when they talk about free speech and what should we limit and stuff, I'm always concerned about that. So yeah, it's a delicate situation.
Equally, it's
like
it's free speech to have. I mean, yeah, I know free speech.
But like, if you're just being out and out racist, obviously you shouldn't be allowed to say those things. They aren't.
But again,
valid.
it's one of those things like, you know, we should all be allowed to believe what we believe. Yeah, in terms of how we tax how we tax people, how we run the school system, how we fund the government.
Not whether we treat
not in terms
people
of whether
of other colours.
Not in terms of treating someone else as if
as
they're
a human
not human.
being. Yeah.
That's where for me, when people have these views and like on Palestine, Israel and stuff, and it's like, yeah, I'm more than happy to discuss the intricacies of ways forward and the history of it. And how it does, but I'm not going to discuss the fact that killing innocent people is actually a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's a no-go.
Yeah.
That's a non-negotiable.
That's not a negotiable, no.
When you're and I know we've said before with the trans rights stuff that's come up in the last like for some reason it's a hot topic in the last 5 or 6 years.
And particularly in the Olympics
Again,
recently as well.
Another thing is like, yeah, but if your views are that trickle down economics is the way to lift yourself out of an economic depression,
you can have
I'm
that
happy to
opinion.
have that discussion. I think you're wrong and we'll have that discussion. But if your views actively stop someone being themselves or living their life or
harmful to
take away their
someone.
human rights,
Yeah.
no, that's not a view.
No.
That's
No.
not something we can just disagree on.
No.
That's not freedom of speech. That's just
No.
bigoted hatred.
Yeah. And I think the problem is it's been very much part of the public discussion for several years now of like stop the boats and like properly dehumanising these people to the point where people are trying to set hotels on fire.
But again, having a discussion about immigration and saying what percentage of people, how many people should we be taking? How do we get them into society? How do we process their applications? Where do we process their applications? I'll have that discussion.
Yeah.
But turning around and saying they're a swarm, they're an invasion,
That's not
dehumanising them and then making it fine when we're violent to them, burning down mosques and attacking mosques and things.
Yeah.
No, that's not a political view. That's a human view. And I think that's the difference between a political view and a human view. If your view is directly impacting another human being's right to live, that's not okay.
Yeah.
You can't. I'm not going to let you hold that view. The other ones, I'll let you hold. I'll disagree adamantly and strongly and vehemently, but you can hold them. But that's crossed the line.
Yeah. No, I agree. I was going to say something. It's completely gone now.
Sorry.
No, it's all right.
Sorry.
What was it we were...
We're just talking about the difference between like when you've got a view that actually directly negatively impacts someone's life.
Gone, whatever the thought was.
Do you want to play this and guitar?
No, I'll tell you what, for the last 10 minutes, I've got another subject that I'd just quickly like to cover because it was something I was thinking about the other day. And we talked about the subjects a while ago.
Look, I've told you, yes, I watch a lot of porn. No, it's not an addiction. Okay, I did the test.
Do you know what? It's quite funny you're saying that considering who I'm about to
mention. Is it?
I'm about to talk about Russell Brand for a second.
Wow. Wow, who'd have known?
Like, I was quite... I re-listened to the episode where we discussed it, right? And I still think my intention wasn't necessarily to defend him. I just didn't like... I don't like the automatic assumption of guilt is what I'm uncomfortable with. Since then, the fact it's gone really quiet, he's now gone full Christian. And I watched, because I haven't engaged with any of his content since it all happened. I just can't. It feels wrong and dirty. But he was on a podcast of like a religious YouTuber in America that I occasionally watch because he gets quite decent guests on. And I've started watching like people like Muslim creators on YouTube as well. So I've like
opening your horizons, expanding your horizons.
And he had Russell Brand on, and I watched literally, I think I was skipping through a lot of it to see if they ever talked about any of it. And it was all just religion talk and how he's religious now, and I was like, oh, you fucking did all of it, didn't you? And all the thing of like you becoming a conspiracist, it is all for the reason of having an audience still, despite the fact you're a scumbag. And
also to be able to go, they're out for me.
Yeah, 100%.
I didn't do it.
And then to turn to religion, I was like, and it seems to be a really common thing.
It's common. It's very common.
Like Jordan Peterson's done it as well. That was like one of the things that started putting me off of him was every interview or podcast he did, he would be banging on about religion. And it was like, this is so far removed.
It's why like Trump, despite being a huge adulterer and assaulter of women, will turn around and go and keep banging on about being a Christian man and Christian family values and stuff.
Yeah,
it's like,
but if you watch House of Cards, there's literally a bit in that where he was like, you'll find most of the family politicians are some of the dodgiest fucks on the planet.
Usually the gayest ones.
Yeah. But yeah, and the reason I wanted to talk about beyond that was not necessarily talk about the case again, but I said to Leanne, I find it really difficult because a massive part of my political awakening
was down to him.
Was Russell Brand and the things he was saying. And I'm like, so for him to go from that for me to someone I find quite disgusting now, I find that really difficult because even though I know what I believe politically is a good thing to believe, the source of it and what sparked it was someone who's frankly quite disgusting. I find that really difficult. I didn't know what you thought. Not that you're necessarily going to have an answer to that.
I completely understand why you feel that way, but at the same time, he sparked your interest and you opened your eyes, but then you did go and read and explore, and you started to, every time a topic came up, you would try and take in as much as you could and form your own opinion.
And I still think, looking back, despite what I think about him, what he was doing at the time was good content, and I think it didn't, not just, I think a lot of people were similar to me, that sparked their political interest. I'm not saying that there's a generation of people that owe their feelings to...
At the time, his political content was not motivated by survival.
No, I mean, looking back, like, because there was the whole thing where he disappeared for a while when he was doing it, and I now look back at that and go, was that just another step on the ladder of this conspiracist man that was over time changing his art? And it seems to have really changed, because I think the general consensus, it was Catherine Ryan that yelled at him on a show that I think it might have even been the roast show that they were all doing.
Well, yeah, because she was basically like, I'm not sharing a stage with that man. Yeah,
and I think it was her. That's not unconfirmed, by the way, but that's, from what I've listened to, that's the general theory, that she was the one that had a go at him. And as soon as that happened, all of his work dried up because no one wanted to touch him anymore, and then he immediately lent into the conspiracy side, or it ramped up at that stage at the very least. So it's just one of the things I've been mulling over and thinking about.
I obviously don't have any particular ties to Ross Brandt. I used to really like him as a presenter because he was chaotic and wild, and I saw a lot of that in myself.
Yeah,
you know, the idea of like, here's a, you know, giving into those invasive thoughts. You're meant to be really professional and presenting this TV show, but it's like, do you know what?
Just be yourself, sort of.
I've just seen someone wearing a green shirt. I'm going to go and spend
and
5
minutes. The most
minutes.
ridiculous hair you've ever seen.
I'm going to go and spend. Listen, come at me for my hair.
Not you. Although when you shaved your head, it was a bit dicey.
I saw a lot of Russell Brand in myself at that age. Like,
I can understand.
I really enjoyed the way he operated.
The level of confidence, I think, appealed to a lot of people and a lot of young men. And then again, in that, I think there's complications of being like things that I saw as positives from this person who isn't a positive person. And that's something I've been struggling with in general. Like, it keeps happening where like people I like and almost respect and really enjoy their content, whatever they keep coming out as really dodgy fucks, basically. And afterwards, I'm like, is there something wrong with me that I'm not seeing this, that I'm not picking up on it?
The only thing that would be wrong with you is if you stuck with them.
Yeah, the only one I say I stuck with them, I just occasionally rewatch House of Cards, is Kevin Spacey, just because I think it's one of the best TV shows I've ever seen. That's one of the rare examples where I've been able to separate the art from the artist.
I still listen to Michael Jackson.
If the only song I re-listen to of Michael Jackson's, it's my favourite one, is Earth Song. I don't know what it is. The video
I can't believe that's your favourite, but I love it. I'm all here for it.
But like, yeah, anytime I'm in like huge rain, like me and my sister went to Brighton a while ago and it was just pissing it down with rain and we were like barely able to walk along the pavement by the beach. And I was just screaming, what about Africans? What about the sea? But yeah, for anyone that doesn't know, there's a video of Michael Jackson singing that song. It was like the music video for the song, and he's like just in a rainforest, I think, and there's loads of wind and rain, and he's just like holding on to trees, screaming.
But yeah, your Russell Brand dilemma, if you want to call it that, I don't think it's. I think we can be thankful to someone for
opening our eyes
and to even giving us an opening. You know, imagine if you got your start in show business because Jimmy Savile gave you a job or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Harvey Weinstein. Or...
Yeah, and there are people, you know, I know we said it before, big fan of Kevin Smith. Harvey Weinstein gave him his start. He's the one who came. He's the one who came and bought. So when
did he release Clerks?
Clerks, yeah. So Clerks was like a homemade film.
Yeah.
Home financed, and then they just showed it at festivals.
And they were the distributor.
And Harvey Weinstein was the one who came and picked it up, and then he financed the subsequent films, and that's why Kevin Smith I saw talking about he'd love to do more stuff with some of the characters in Dogma, but all of the characters were owned by Harvey Weinstein. And he's like,
So you'd have to work with Harvey.
and everyone did like a ooh, and he's like, yeah, right, pulled this face, and he was like, okay, so you get it.
Yeah.
And he's like, but he's always said, he's like, I'm very grateful for Harvey Weinstein. He said, obviously, I feel there's
I
guilt. So
wouldn't be
like,
where I
I
am
look back
today
and I
without
go,
him.
could I have seen the signs? Should I have seen the signs? But he's like, I despise him. I despise everything he stands for, everything he does. I hate it. He says, but it doesn't stop me being thankful that he's the one who put me on this stage. He says, it's a very difficult thing to separate, but he says, I can do that.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I don't think there is an answer to
Russell Brand.
I'm
thankful to him, but despise him.
Yeah, I think that's basically where I've landed. To be fair, I've been able to rationalise it in my head that I'm not still on the Russell Brand.
No, if you've stuck with him, different.
Yeah, like if since the accusations, I was still watching his podcasts and watching old podcasts of him. And that's the thing. That still pisses me off. Some of my favourite podcasts I've ever listened to have had him on them, and like you almost feel robbed by it. Do you know what I mean? And like, obviously, I'm nowhere near the victim. I just want to throw that out there, but yeah, it's been interesting.
Just a quick question, because I have a view on it.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll present my view and then ask you how you feel about it. So for me, I don't so much judge a podcast on who they'd have as a guest. I think you can have some truly despicable people on as guests, but on how they handle that episode, how they handle that interview. Would you judge a podcast on who they had as guests? Or for you, would it be the same? Would it be it would depend how they frame the conversation?
Well. It depends, like, how reprehensible the person is, I guess. Like, but in general, I think I tend to agree. Like, I was willing to watch the Jordan Peterson, Tommy Robinson, because I genuinely wanted to hear what he had to say, like Tommy Robinson, and to see what sort of shit he was going to come out with. The issue I had was, like, Jordan Peterson was like, I've not seen Jordan Peterson be that sympathetic towards someone before, and I sat there and I was like, I can't sit and watch someone like borderline fawn over. So because of that, that's like my final nail in the coffin with Jordan Peterson, because like from where he started, where like I agree.
I never liked him. The few times you showed me a clip, it was just like
no, but like for me, it was what I liked about his arguments in the beginning was it at least came across to me that he was using stats and genuine facts that he'd researched and to back up some of the stuff he was saying, and that in at least his opinion, he was taking a principled stance on free speech and it was irrelevant what it was actually about. And I genuinely believe that's what he meant at the time. I then think he's then got more famous than he probably ever should have been. That fucked him up. He's then been touring the world since, earning millions upon millions doing speeches, and I then know from the fact I followed him, he got incredibly unwell, his wife got incredibly unwell, and his daughter got incredibly unwell. All three of them almost died at different points. He then became this really emotional person in interviews, so I think it's quite clear he had a genuine breakdown at some stage during all of that, because he was on antidepressants at one point. And he's done what a lot of people do, but I'm surprised he's done, which is found Jesus basically at the end of it. And like, look, you can do that, but for me, it's so far removed from what he was at the start of it, which felt like a genuine
principled man of science
to what's essentially a God botherer now, that's searching for the meaning of the world and all of his arguments within Scripture, and yeah, just doesn't interest. But the final nail was the tone of conversation with Tommy Robinson.
A man who should be ultimately
and he caught
questioned.
He caught him out accidentally on something where Tommy Robinson was talking about when he was in court. The judge was like, he was trying to say, I'm a journalist, so I'm just reporting what I've been told. And he was like, no, but you need actual proof to distribute that information.
What Jordan Peterson said, or the judge?
No, the judge. And Jordan Peterson said, but you had that because you've just told us you've got all these school records about the teacher and all that. He's like, no, at that point I didn't. So then what he's just admitted to is that he released a documentary where he made very serious accusations about people.
And it was all made up.
Zero evidence other than hearsay conversations he supposedly had with people that worked at this school. And even when he showed up to this interview, did he have the school records with him to prove it to everyone in this interview? No, he didn't. So, and at that point, I was like, oh, there's nothing to be gained watching this interview other than just annoying me. I can totally...
Someone who stokes anger and hatred should be given the hardline questioning of why?
I can't...
Why do you do it?
I'm not a big fan of Piers Morgan at all. In most situations, I think he's quite a reprehensible
But a broken
person.
clock's right twice a day.
But
all that.
Watching the Andrew Tate interview, he would... Like, there was a point where he was like, would you condemn Tommy Robinson for specifically these things? And he just would, and he would not let him move on until he addressed the question. He was like, well, you can say whatever, I'm just going to keep asking this question until you answer it. So I'll give him his due that he actually gave someone a tough interview.
He can. That's the thing about Piers Morgan.
Because he's a big enough prick to not give a shit what the other person thinks. He does have it in him
to... Most interviewers fall into the trap, and he does himself on many occasions of, it's all about me. I want to look like I'm asking the hard questions. And so I'll ask them, and I don't really care if you answer them or not. And I might ask you a couple of times and go, go on, tell us the real answer. I'm not letting you go and then go, no, I've got too many questions, move on. But he does have it in him to actually be, like I have seen over the years, a number of examples of him being a good interviewer. He will ask the big questions. He will use their words against them.
He quite often has very shit opinions.
But he will ask big questions. He will use their words against them, and he will not let them go until they've answered. He won't be like, no, I've got other questions. He's like, listen, the interview's an hour. If you want to spend the whole hour talking about this one thing, denying, refusing to answer this question, that's fine. We'll spend the hour doing that. But despite those little moments, like you said, he tends to have shit opinions. He can't handle criticism well.
Quite an obnoxious man.
That's the thing is when Alex Burrows challenged him on Good Morning Britain or whatever it was.
I think he lost a lot of respect from people that day. Just the way he approached it. He could have gone, you're talking absolute nonsense. I'm not even going to engage with that. And then that would have been a better reaction than... Do you know what I mean?
I don't have to stand here and listen to this.
No, but to just stand up and walk out... Or because someone said, mate, just move on. She wasn't interested. Like, get on with your life.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, bro, that's a pod.
Yep.
I'm quite pleased. I didn't know whether we'd spend the whole time more or less talking about the riots, and I think we did really well. I think we covered a lot of it. But I think the way I would like to end it, and I'm sure you would agree with me, is to say that to the Muslim community, anyone who's not white, basically, like there's people out there that support you and care about you, and you are very much welcome in this country. And I know
very much so, and a vital part of this community.
100%.
And these communities.
And I definitely think there needs to be a more honest conversation in politics about how vital immigration actually is. We really need to change the narrative on that, and I hope it happens.
They don't even have to be. I would like it to be framed, but they don't even have to be framed positively. Just neutrally, just frame immigration. Also,
if you're someone who's been affected by the recent riots, if you feel comfortable enough, safe enough, if you'd like to reach out to us and talk to us and potentially be on the pod, that would be incredible.
Or if you took part,
and
ring up and tell us why.
Yeah,
how can they do that?
Jake, that's a great question, by the way. I like it. Great segue. Guys, you can do that, and it'll be here on the screen at Twitter at Swords Crossing, on Facebook at Crossing Swords, on Instagram and TikTok at Crossing Swords _podcast.
Can I just say, that's not going to line up, is it? It's going to look shit.
That's fine. Yeah. It's going to be on YouTube. You can find us on... Jake, you ruined it. You can email us at crossingswords19@gmail.com. You can find our YouTube page by clicking on the link in the description of every single audio episode.
Every episode?
Every episode.
That's insane.
I know, just to make sure we don't want people missing out.
That's so easy.
But please, if you can, it would make a massive difference if you... liked, subscribed on literally any platform. It doesn't matter which one, but preferably all of them. But
yes,
even
please.
If you click on one of our YouTube videos, our TikTok videos, and hit like or share or whatever you can do, it makes a huge difference to us and the algorithm. But thank you for all the support recently, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye. Don't riot.
Don't riot.